Once upon a time, in a land filled with rolling hills and the warm embrace of the sun, a great multitude had gathered to hear the teachings of Jesus. The air was charged with anticipation, and excitement rippled through the crowd. Men, women, and children came from various villages, drawn together by an unquenchable thirst for hope and healing. This was more than just a gathering, it was a movement. People came from distant lands, walking for hours, if not days, to witness the man who spoke with authority and performed miracles that left them in awe. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Jesus shared profound lessons that challenged the status quo, calling people to love one another, to forgive, and to seek the kingdom of God. The parables he shared painted vivid pictures of grace and redemption, leaving the audience captivated. They were hungering not just for bread but for the spiritual nourishment that flowed from his words. One by one, people began to recognize that this man's teachings could transform their lives. As the day wore on and the sun began to dip toward the horizon, anxiety stirred among the disciples. The crowd remained vast and restless, their faces filled with hope yet tinged with concern. Few had thought to bring provisions, and as time ticked away, they began to realize the evening would soon fall, but hunger was creeping in. With stomachs beginning to rumble, the disciples exchanged worried glances, torn between their desire to serve the people and the pressing reality of their circumstances. In a moment of escalating concern, one of the disciples finally spoke, his voice filled with urgency. "Lord," he said hesitantly, "we're in a remote place and it's getting late. Send the people away so they can find food for themselves." There was a hint of desperation in his tone, and he gestured toward the crowd that seemed to stretch endlessly into the horizon. The other disciples nodded in agreement. After all, what could they do? They were just ordinary men, with limited resources and no way of providing for thousands. Their hearts ached for the people, but their minds were clouded with the enormity of the situation. However, Jesus, in his infinite wisdom, looked upon the gathering not as a burden but as sheep yearning for a shepherd. His heart was filled with compassion for both the crowd and his disciples, who still did not fully grasp the power of faith. He turned to them with unwavering confidence and said, "You give them something to eat." At this, the disciples exchanged bewildered glances, struggling to comprehend his words. Could it really be possible? "We have nothing but 5 small loaves of bread and 2 fish, how can we feed so many?" they protested, their minds racing with the enormity of the task ahead. It was as if they were trying to catch a glimpse of a future that seemed impossible. Jesus, however, remained calm. He was not deterred by their doubt or the limitations they presented. Instead, he smiled warmly at their disbelief, sensing that a miraculous moment was about to unfold. Taking the meager offering of bread and fish, he lifted it high towards heaven, drawing the attention of the crowd for a moment. With a heart full of gratitude, he prayed, saying, "Father, thank you for what we have." This simple act of prayer was infused with significance. It was a declaration of trust, a moment where the finite met the infinite. He acknowledged that even though 5 loaves and 2 fish seemed insubstantial, in God's hands, it had the potential for greatness. Jesus then broke the bread into pieces and handed the broken parts to the astonished disciples, who stared at him with wide eyes, still processing the magnitude of what was happening. "Distribute this," he instructed. The disciples felt the weight of their mission as they set forth to serve the crowd, but uncertainty loomed in their hearts. Yet, as they began to serve, an extraordinary miracle unfolded. To their astonishment, the bread didn't diminish even as they handed it out, and the fish remained whole. The more they distributed, the more they seemed to have. It was as if the food was multiplying right before their eyes, a magnificent spectacle that felt otherworldly. Basket after basket was filled, and the crowd responded with joy and gratitude. These were not just vague witnesses. They were people with stories, families, hopes, and dreams, all gathering together, unified in their experience. Children laughed and called for their parents, who joyfully took part in experiencing a miracle together. People from every corner of the crowd had tears of relief in their eyes, their earlier concerns forgotten as they savored the miraculous food. Over 5,000 men, women, and children were fed that day, each one participating in a divine act of mercy that they would remember for the rest of their lives. As the evening grew darker and the hearts of the crowd were lightened by the abundant meal, Jesus directed his disciples to gather whatever was left. When they returned, they found themselves overwhelmed by the remnants. The disciples collected 12 baskets overflowing with fragments of bread and fish, miraculous leftovers from such a meager start. Their eyes widened in disbelief as they realized the enormity of what had just occurred. The message, a divine reminder. The moments that transpired that day were far from ordinary. What had begun as a daunting task transformed into an unforgettable testament to the power of faith and trust in the divine. This miracle served as a reminder that when we place our little in the hands of Jesus, He can turn it into more than enough. Reflecting on this remarkable event, we can see that this story transcends the mere concept of a meal. It invites us to trust that God can multiply whatever we surrender to Him, echoing the truth of His abundant generosity even when we find ourselves at the brink of limitation. In our lives, we may often feel we are running on empty, our resources and time scarce, particularly when faced with overwhelming challenges or need. Yet, no gift is too small and no need too great. This narrative challenges us to lean on our faith, to acknowledge that when our circumstances seem insurmountable, we must look to Jesus and offer what we have, however insignificant it may seem. Consider the implications of this miracle. A boy offered his simple lunch, 5 loaves and 2 fish. In the grand scheme of things, it appeared to be nothing at all. Yet, it was this very offering that became the instrument of one of the most incredible miracles recorded in the Scriptures. When faith meets surrender, miracles happen. The story of Jesus feeding the 5,000 continues to inspire hearts, reminding us of the divine potential that lies within our humble offerings. It paints a vivid picture of community, compassion, and the boundless love of a God who seeks to nourish not only our physical needs but also the spiritual hunger of our lives. Moreover, this story encourages us to reflect on the nature of our own contributions. How often do we hesitate to share what we have, believing it to be too little to make a difference? Our resources, whether they are time, talent, or treasure, can seem trivial in light of the greater needs around us. Yet, this miracle illustrates that our willingness to offer what we have can lead to unimaginable outcomes. Together, we can build a tapestry of generosity that transforms not only individuals but entire communities. Each act of kindness, no matter how small, can create ripples that extend far beyond what we can see. The friends we support, the neighbors we assist, the strangers we help, all contribute to a greater narrative of love and community. In our daily lives, let us carry the essence of this miracle in our hearts. When we feel overwhelmed by the needs around us, we can take a step back and remember that our offering may be the seed from which great things grow. Let us be inspired to engage with our faith and to surrender our limited resources into the capable hands of Jesus, trusting that He can multiply them for a greater good. So let us be encouraged by the promise in this story. As we navigate our own journeys and face trials ahead, let us remember to share our little with faith. For in doing so, we may find ourselves partaking in a miracle, one that has the power to change lives, fill hungry souls, and illustrate the boundless generosity of God's heart. Who knows, what began as 5 loaves and 2 fish could turn into a feast that nourishes not just the body, but also the spirit of our world. Every act of sharing, every moment of surrender, becomes a note in the grand symphony of God's abundant love. And together, let us create a chorus that resounds with hope and miracles, carrying the message of Jesus' generosity into every corner of our lives. Together, we are part of the story that continues to unfold, one where faith, trust, and love can reshape our reality.